things that matter. That's my point. All right, moving on. For the next one, goodbye, and no, you won't be missed. Late night TV is in deep dookie. They're in a lot of problems. We've known this for a while because they got into politics. They stopped being funny, and all they did is insult anyone on the right, Trump, conservatives. Then they bring on left-leaning Hollywood, which is almost all of it. They bring on politicians. They bring on politicians like occasional Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They bring on Pelosi, and then they do interviews, softball interviews, to get the message out. Well, people have had enough, and they're tuning out. From Breitbart, from Nolte, far left late night TV's ad revenue collapses 41%. And now, if you recall, right about the time the jab came out, and they were dancing around singing songs about the jab and telling you should be a good little drone and do as they say, they fell off a cliff. Now they're falling off another cliff. They say the ad revenue for America's far left late night TV shows has collapsed 41% in just 5 years. And that's because of all the propaganda. Gee, I wonder why that happened. Taps chin, scratches beard, stares at ceiling. Are you ready for a laugh? Although the sycophants at the left-wing Variety devote 4,500 plus words to the collapse of the late night's ad revenue, only once and after 20 paragraphs does Variety dare to suggest it might have a little something to do with the divisive, nasty, smug, humorless, and mean-spirited left turn late night took about 5 years ago. They say as the election of President Donald Trump polarized the nation, some of late night's voices chose to lean into politics. The fragmentation of viewing and the trickier conversational terrain have hurt the programs, says Harrison. There have been so much political news over the last 6 to 8 years that has filtered into late night. When that becomes a large part of your program in this environment, you are, by math, probably not appealing to half of your potential audience, he cautions. Meanwhile, as more viewers bypass linear TV, he says, it's difficult to discover these shows or promote them. Now, if you guys remember, I've mentioned this many, many, many times when we're talking about movies or video games or TV shows or commercials or everything. Okay, when we talk about this stuff, I've said many, many, many times, you're immediately chopping your audience in half. You look at some of these new movies. Now, you could be a left-leaning guy, and you might even be like, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. Okay, that's fine. But wouldn't you as a man get tired of seeing how awful and idiotic men are being portrayed? Now, maybe not in your frontal lobe where it takes critical thinking, but somewhere in your lizard brain, are you not like, this sucks, man, I don't like this. I'm always being told I'm a bad person. And so what happens? Well, men bad. All right, well, or I should say conservatives bad. Boom, there goes half the country. And then you keep ragging on them. And there goes like probably a good portion of the independent people that say, I'm tired of you crapping on me and just always sharing the message. I'm tired of that. And then you pick on men all the time. You're putting like black celebrities in dresses. You're making white men cowards and stupid and laughable. Even some people on the left will be like, I'm really not into this anymore. So before you know it, you've whittled 100% of your audience that might be interested into your show to definitely only 30% that might be interested in your show. And probably half of them or a good portion of them are like, I'm not really into late night shows. And then you're done. They say instead of sycophants at the Variety mostly blaming it on streaming. Instead, the sycophants at Variety mostly blame it on streaming, which is taking viewers, social media, which is taking viewers, and the like. Because as we all know, streaming and social media weren't around 5 years ago. Oh, wait, they were. Well, that was a waste of 4,500 words. Variety, useless, of course. Your only goal is to suck up to third-rate celebrities who no one watches anymore. Well, I guess sucking up to third-rate celebrities no one watching anymore is one way to make a living. Here are the specifics on the collapsing ad revenue. In 2018, 7 late-night programs, NBC's Tonight, Late Night, CBS's Late Show and Late Show, ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, and Comedy Central's Daily Show, and NBC's Saturday Night Live drew more than $698 million in advertising in 2018, according to Vivix, a tracker of ad spending. By 2022, that total came to $412 million, a drop of 41%, and that's 2022. What is it like today? It's even worse because people are still moving off of cable for streaming. Old people are being ended and they're passing, and young people are saying, I'm not watching cable. They say Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, and the others have all in recent years had to grapple not only with viewers moving to streaming, but with the bug that forced their shows to embrace performances without a band and live audiences and absences due to the being sick. Of course, Variety blames the China flu. Guess how many times Gutfield's mentioned in the 26 paragraphs that follow paragraph 22? Never, not once. Gutfield is mentioned only 3 times in the entire 4,500 word piece. Jimmy Kimmel, whose ratings are lower than Gutfield's, rates 17 mentions. Now, if you guys are a little confused by that paragraph, you're like me and you don't watch cable. What it is, there's a guy named Greg Gutfeld. He's a comedian, and he does a show, but it's a political show. He comes right out and says, this is a political show. They make fun of politicians. They have politicians on. It was designed as a political show. The other shows, late night TV shows, they used to be about entertainers and comedians and Hollywood stars, and they'd maybe have some live bits. If you ever went back and watched the very old Johnny Carson, he used to have some live bits, and they were very funny. That no one's come close to the original Johnny Carson. I can still go back and watch those shows, and they were really entertaining. But what happened is these other shows turned into political, and there's like 8 of them. So when you only have 50% of the audience watching 8 shows, they don't have good ratings. When you have the other half of the country watching one late night show, Late Night with Greg Gutfeld, he gets huge ratings. And so the ad revenue is very good. But Variety doesn't want to talk about that because they can't say something nice about a conservative talk show and say something bad about the leftists, because you can't do that because they're Variety. 5 years ago, these left-wing shows almost earned $700 million per year. Now it's closer to $400 million. Does that even cover the budgets to produce the junk? Anyway, that's how poisoned by politics the entertainment world has become. These propagandists are willing to lose around $300 million per year to lecture, harass, lie, and spread hate. This is from John Nolte on Twitter for Breitbart, and they do have a point. This is from New York Post. Same but slightly similar, because that other article was definitely focused on Variety and how Variety can't tell it like it is because they were just painting the balls of the leftist late night talk show hosts and not mentioning Greg Gutfeld other than in passing. Well, this one, for the New York Post, the end is nigh for snooze fest late night talk shows. This is from yesterday. In an interview this week, Jimmy Kimmel conceded that the end is nigh for late night talk shows. Let me open that link in another one. I don't know if there'll be any late night television shows on network TV in 10 years, said Jimmy Kimmel. Maybe there'll be one, but there won't be a lot of them. Jimmy's right. The culling has already commenced. After James Corden departed the Late Late Show in 2023, CBS didn't kick off a dramatic late shift style talent search of yesteryear. The network brass just replaced it with a comedy game show called After Midnight. So what's happening is that as people move away from cable, as more people move to streaming, the late night talk shows are going to struggle already. But because they went so hard and so hateful against half the country, a lot of people tuned out. Now, I will admit this, it's crazy, I know, that I used to watch the Oscars. I never watched the music awards because I don't care. But I did watch the Oscars. I liked seeing the awards for television, which actors got it, which special effects, I liked all that stuff. It was very entertaining to kind of get a glimpse into Hollywood and see who won the awards for best special effects. But then they started getting weird, and they started bringing forward these movies that I'd never heard of because there's some artsy thing that was put in 3 theaters, but they have to tout it because the skin color of people were correct, and it was women doing it, or it was the LGHD TV community doing it, or whatever. And then they started talking about baby deletion and that it's important for who you vote for. And then they started talking about politics, and then they started hating on Donald Trump, as they called him, Donald Trump. Then they started hating on Trump and anybody that voted for him. And after a while, the same thing happened where people were like, I don't deserve this. I don't need this. I don't need millionaires preaching at me about how I think is wrong. How about you shut the fuck up? And that's what happened. And now people like myself and other people that even got passing entertainment out of it have boycotted it. And that's why the numbers have just collapsed for everything, for all these shows. He says, Jimmy Kimmel says he's worried about his career after talk show ends. I'll have a hard time. Yeah, what are you going to do? Be like Don Lemon and go to YouTube and get 10,000 views of video? You've been propped up for so. How about you retire with all your millions and just go F off? He said, I'll have a hard time when it's over. It worries me. That's part of the reason why I keep going. No one wants you anymore. You're being propped up. You're just being held up. And you shouldn't be. And they should let you go. Go to the trash heap with your irrelevance. Everybody's done with talk shows. They're over it. They went political. They stopped being funny. They started being preachy. Same thing with Saturday Night Live. Some of you guys are probably old enough to remember old SNL. I watched Saturday Night Live when Eddie Murphy was on there, and Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. And then they went through other phases. And over the years, all the way up until, who was the last seasons I saw? It was like Chris Farley and Adam Sandler, kind of that era. The Adam Sandler, Chris Farley. Who's the other one I'm thinking of? David Spade. I watched through that era. Like, I've watched all the way up through. And then at a certain point, I just remember turning in and saying, this isn't funny anymore. Like, they pretty much about the time, who was the last one? Will Ferrell. Once Will Ferrell was kind of done, they started looking for, like, one of them was a they, them, some lady or dude, they, them. It was really important they hired one of them, but they weren't funny. And then they started making sure that they had representation and all the right colors of people and everything else. They forgot to make sure they were funny. And the worst part is the old comedians, the people that used to be on the show, they would write their own bits. So these, people like Adam Sandler would write a script for a skit, and so would Chris Farley, and they'd all submit them, and they'd sit in the reader's room, because I watched a documentary on this. They'd sit in the reader's room, and they'd all talk about, hey, let's do that, and they'd do a dry run, see if people found it funny, and the best ones made it to the show. Well, now the people they've hired aren't funny. They can't act. They're not funny, and they can't write. So now they have a writer's room that are full of bad writers writing bad scripts for people that can't act and aren't funny. And that's pretty much what SNL's turned into. They brought it on themselves, and they get what they ask for. All of these shows, they deserve what they're going to get.